I think. Yep, there we go. Just took a second. All right, welcome back to the Movie World Marathon. I'm Andrew.
Ooh, I'm Mac.
Heck yeah.
Sorry,
Took
missed my cue.
Yes, you did. That's all right. And we are on another movie for our Obscure Fantasy Marathon. We're on Inkheart. Came out
Yay.
2009. Sorry, one thing said 2008. This other says 2009, but it's January of
I think
2009,
there
so there
was
might be
a
some confusion.
delay.
There might have been.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So directed by Lane Softly. Interesting name. Um,
It's Ian.
Starring, of course, Brendan Fraser and Eliza Bennett, Jessica Grist as someone in there, Paul Bettany, Andy Serkis, Jennifer Connelly, kind of for like a second, Jim Broadbent, Professor Slughorn, you know him, and of course Helen Mirren. Those are like the big ones, and yeah, spattering of other names here or there, but those are really like the significant faces that we see in this movie. So, this is the
So,
interesting addition.
yes.
Yes.
Quick note, some info things.
Yes.
Something. Okay, this is kind of a fun thing to start with. Apparently, Brendan was the author's personal pick for
Oh,
Mo. And like, in
interesting.
fact, to the point where the character Mo was kind of inspired by his performance in The Mummy.
Ah,
Not the same character,
uh-huh.
but
I see.
uh-huh.
That's gonna be interesting with one of my only notes on
Yeah.
said decision. So,
Let's keep going.
as this was my first time seeing this movie, so
Yeah. It's the first time I've seen it in a while. I
okay.
watched it a couple times as a kid. It wasn't
Hmm.
one of the ones I had in conversation or anything, but I enough to have like solidified it when I was a kid, right?
Hmm.
Um it was good revisiting,
Hmm.
but I do think I came at it with some clearer eyes than I
Yeah,
did as a
I
kid.
I understand. So if you don't mind, if I could
Mhm.
put out my
Go for it.
my initial
Your
thoughts.
first experience.
Yes,
Tell us
first
about it.
first experience, initial thoughts. I know that during this marathon, I have not been, shall we say, gracious. Um, but now we're kind of in the era of like these are like movies and not just fun silly animated stories about unicorns. Like there's like this is it's like a movie, Stardust, Inkheart, some of the ones that we'll do later, a never ending story. These are like
Mm,
movies,
interesting.
shall
Okay.
shall you say.
I wouldn't have included Never Ending
I
Story in that
would
category,
include the never
but
ending story. I think you could
okay.
argue to include the never ending story over like the Hobbit and the Last Unicorn. You,
Oh,
you know what I mean?
it's more a movie than those, but I think
Yeah.
it still kind of fits in that category of like goofy, weird fantasy that doesn't
Sure.
really have a rhyme or reason.
I would argue this is a different conversation. I'd argue there's more substance to
Okay.
Never Ending Story than there is to Dark Crystal. Like the Dark Crystal is the
Okay.
cutoff where we get into like
Interesting.
yes, I would strongly argue that. But anyway, we're in the
Okay.
movie thing, but because we're
Yes.
in
Movie
the
Taker.
yes because we're in the movie period of this marathon, I wanted to watch it and try to review it as a movie, and I didn't walk away super positive. So like I'm not trying to be a downer is my big point here
Hmm.
because I loved last week's movie. This movie I think is not bad at all. It's just such an awesome concept. And if you don't have I don't know, man, like Guillermo del Toro level imagination or Disney's kind of budget, I almost don't want you to
Mm-hmm.
make it. Like it's just the I love the concept of a thing in a book coming out of a book. I love it, and I hate it when that concept is wasted. I love Goosebumps, like the movie, like where that happens. I hate that it's just all meant and silly because that's such a brilliant concept. I like there's a whole show I watched when I was a kid, Stanley, where he hops into a book and animals come out of his book. Like I love Magic Treehouse. I love this. This is amazing, and I love crossovers. So you've got characters and monsters from Greek antiquity, and you've got all these classic literature things coming out of books. That's fantastic. And somehow I still find that I'm bored in places.
Yeah.
Somehow you took this concept and it feels lackluster.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that's possible. I understand it. Maybe I'm not being
I think
entirely
I know
fair.
what happened. Keep
Uh,
going,
well,
but I
so
think I know what happened.
I wanted
To the
to, I wanted
concept.
to, yeah, I want to put some positive out there real quick. I think the concept is great. I think the characters are mostly cool. I'm I really like the kid. What's her name? Um,
Meggie.
Maggie. Maggie is cool, and I love Brendan Fraser.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he needed to be in this movie. I don't think they.
Interesting.
Well, because like I love Brendan Fraser, but Brendan Fraser does like really really well being either a fantastic '90s badass, such as the Mummy, or a really like a unassuming heroic nerd, very Milo Thatch. He
Okay.
does it. He does it in Journey to the Center of the Earth. I would not pick Brendan Fraser to be the sad, spooky bookworm dad who doesn't want to do anything. Because that's kind of what like
Mm-hmm.
he wants to save his wife, and that's all good and fine. Like the acting is great, and the writing is fine, but I kind of feel like you're wasting Brendan Fraser in this. He doesn't get to do anything that he's like I have come to know him for, if that makes sense. I feel like what you have
Yeah.
Brendan Fraser doing, almost anybody could do. He's not the most interesting person in this movie, and he's the guy that kicks off the entire situation. I think Helen Mirren is way more interesting, and I really like her character.
Yeah,
Um,
that actually stumbles right into one of the things that I think that okay, so I think this movie can't decide who it wants to be the main character.
oh, very much
And
so.
not in an ensemble way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ensemble this is not a movie example, but the best ensemble thing I can think of is Six of Crows. It just very fluidly jumps between the perspectives of this gang of and this is not that. This is not trying to share this is just and like I don't know, I've not read the book. Full honesty. I've not read the book, so I don't know if the book does a better job of balancing or not. Maybe it was the translation that made it an original flaw in the story. Um, but it doesn't decide whose story we're gonna follow. Are we
Mm-hmm.
following Maggie as she explores and discovers this world and tries to
Mm-hmm.
get out of it? Are we following Dustfinger as he tries to get his way back into his own world and we deal with him trying to decide who he wants to be as he
Mm-hmm.
tries to get back home? Are we dealing with Mo, who's like grieving and also searching for someone he's lost and taking care of the daughter that he kind of accidentally like caused to not have a mother? Like, what story arc are we supposed to be paying attention to? In a good story, in a good complex story, all these things play off of each other well, especially since they're all family oriented. But the movie can't decide which emotional beat to put where,
Mm-hmm.
and so it just kind of ends up feeling like we don't know who we're supposed to be prioritizing in a given. We don't know what's going on, or we do know what's going on, but we can't quite keep track of who knows what.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is particularly bad with the scene with Dustfinger and Reza the first time we see
Yeah,
her,
I
Maggie's
was flipping
mom.
out. I was mad at
Yeah.
Dustfinger because I was like, dude, what the hell? But then I that twist of him coming out of the book as she goes in, I was like, oh, okay, that's pretty good. But then the whole voice thing is like, okay, that's really convenient.
But like, if it has to be an exchange, right, where one goes in and the other comes, like, why wouldn't you just like talk to Mo about it? Clearly, they have a relationship, or at least they did at one point in time. One which would have benefited them both if he had tried to read Dustfinger back into the book. Maybe he would have gotten his wife out.
Mm.
I'm not totally clear as to why they hate each other, other than the fact that like just him to put him back, and Mo doesn't want to risk it. But at the same time, like, he also is trying to find his wife. He's looking for a copy of Inkheart. So what's the problem, I guess? You know, and then it turns out that Dustfinger knows Reza, but he doesn't know that it's Reza until
Somehow.
we see him discover it.
Yeah.
Somehow. Yeah. And only then would he have a problem with, like, trying to bring her back to Mo, because then maybe he's afraid that the exchange won't happen. So I do kind of see where they were going with that character beat, but because they confused us so early on motivation in the relationship, like, by the time we get to the betrayal and the character growth thing, I don't know what I'm supposed to be thinking is happening inside the mind of the character. I'm already lost as to what's happening. I do think this movie has really strong character introductions, like Dustfinger walking through the fire and everything like that.
For sure.
Very cool. And I think all of the characters are that sort of epitomizes who they are and be in the story. But the follow through on the character arcs and the sort of priority of who we're caring about and what they're thinking about in that moment is all over the place. The editing reflects it too. It jumps from scene to scene without explanation sometimes.
And the whole third act, Brendan Fraser just disappears. He spends about 20 minutes just jumping around on rooftops while we follow Maggie and her interesting rise to stardom, which is all good and fine. Like, I think the ending is interesting and how she realizes she can make her own stories, and that's how they defeat them in the end. Like, I think that's cool. There's substance to that. I'm a little iffy on how her future boyfriend is a literal literary character that they stole out of a book. I'm not going to think about that right now. I think it's interesting to bring in the author of Inkheart. I think that's kind of fun, and his complete ineptitude is almost charming because it's his work brought to life. There's something very interesting about that. And I understand where his perspective would come from. And the sequence where they read the tornado out of Wizard of Oz is amazing. I love that. I really, really do. The little menagerie of book characters, like, there's so much in this that I really do like, or I find really, really interesting. But it's unintentionally the first draft of multiple ideas that are then done better. My first...
And what's crazy about that is it shouldn't be a first draft because it has a book.
I know.
You know, it has a whole book. And again, I've not read the book, so maybe there are inherent flaws in the book itself.
Yeah.
Or maybe the book is way better because the book is big. Like, it's like 500 pages big.
God damn.
So, or more. I can't remember now. I remember on the shelf. And that to me speaks to a complexity that we don't get in this, because really the problem with this film is that, like, not only is the editing choppy and the characters kind of jumping perspectives in a way that doesn't make sense, I also feel like the creative team, or maybe the director specifically, is not interested in the world of Mo and Maggie. It is only interested in the fantasy world, because we get lots of really cool things with the fantasy world. We get, like, you know, unique characters, we get really cool sequences. Fareed is one of the best bits of the movie, just like because he's truly unique and interesting, and he's got his own thing going on right? But that has to be rooted in a love for the real world as well. Otherwise, Mo's insistence at protecting it and protecting it doesn't make sense. And Helen Mirren's character's whole thing.
I'm sorry, say
the
again.
Aunt character.
Helen Mirren's.
Mirren's. Yeah, the Aunt character. Her whole world is in the reality of enjoying a fiction book, Eleanor. And if we don't care about reality, then her whole thing seems really silly, because she's completely out of place in this world that's fictional characters and people who can read out fictional. So you have to actually care about the real world to tell this story well, and I don't feel like do.
Mm-hmm. Now, yeah. This is one of those ones where like I really don't want to hate on it, and I don't mean to hate also very very much so, because as I've said and as you've indicated, there are good ideas. Don't know how well they may be adapted, so certain things can be taken with a grain of salt, and there are some structural problems. And much like last week, I do take issue with the rules of the magic, and I don't think that is wrong because the magic is a massive plot point here,
I
and
agree.
it establishes rules, and therefore, I think if you're gonna do that, you should elaborate further, especially when you have multiple instances of downtime in your movie where people are talking. I do not like across the board, every movie, every story, everything. I do not like the whole I did this thing once, it spooked me, and so for 10 years I just decided never to do it again, even though my goal right now is to do it again to bring out my wife from this book. I think it makes more sense that he should have some sort of weird secret cellar with like with the tamest books possible, where he is bringing stuff out so he can learn how to control it, because it's his goal to bring her out of the book. So you can't just have him completely quit cold turkey. It's also not made clear if his own stories can come to life or not, because he says he doesn't want Maggie making up her own stories. He doesn't want her getting into this. But she does not, like, nothing has indicated that she has that power. Like, I hate to compare it to this. It's not like Jumper, where the thing that this super secret society is aware of, their kid then has that power that they are aware, and we try to, force on them the opposite, and they stumble into that world. Like, it's not like that. We don't know she has the power until later. So why are you against making up stories? Why are you against fiction? That's another question I think cannot help be asked. I understand that from a movie like this, all the things that are going to be brought out of books are things in the public domain. That's totally fine. I understand that. I think it's a bit of a missed opportunity not to introduce like Frankenstein or Dracula or something like that. Have a bit of a gang of bad guys that aren't just a bunch of trolls and weird morons. However, what are the rules there? Because I'm not getting into what is or isn't fiction. Does it only apply to fiction? First of all, it is not made clear if it is. And then, so let's say it only applies to fiction. Well, what happens if you read Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer? Do you bring out Abraham Lincoln? If it's not
Probably,
just
but like
fiction,
character Abraham Lincoln,
sure.
right?
Yeah, but like if it's not just fiction and you read an autobiography of someone, what happens there? What happens if you read the Bible? What happens if you read the Quran? What happens if you read the Egyptian Book of the Dead? There's I think not you don't have to keep going down that endless rabbit hole. But I think there are fair questions here as to like what kind of power do these people have at their fingertips, or I don't know. And so the other thing is, why do you have to include the whole you bring something out, something goes back in? Because that's not consistent. Little Red Riding Hood's
No.
hood falls, and nothing went into the book. It's like, oh well, you just didn't see. Maybe something did go
Yeah.
into the book.
But
Okay,
like
well
they
then
do that
indicate
several
that.
times.
Indicate
The
that.
only time they really hold to it is when it's a person and a character switching places.
Right.
It's the only time. And even then, it's not clear exactly how it works, because it's clear that Capricorn has his own and he's been reading things out of books for a while now. And the
Mm-hmm.
reader stutters, so there's like,
I don't love.
flaws or
Yeah, I don't
whatever.
love that idea either. But that's neither here nor there. So go on.
I think it's something we should talk about, but let's go back to it.
Uh huh.
And so like, you know, they've been clearly at this process for he's got a whole army.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the missing posters sign?
Right.
Where
What has been
like
missing? What
surely
is
there's been some collateral damage. Even if they've been moving around, which have been, even if they've been, it'd be really good for the story to that maybe Mo's been keeping tabs on a string of person,
Mm-hmm.
you know, something, because he knows the Capricorn's out there. Because
Mm-hmm.
Dustfinger and him have like a conversation about
Mm-hmm.
Capricorn. So, like, where are the real world consequences for the bad guy doing the thing that our good guy won't do?
Mm-hmm.
Eh,
Yeah, and
what's up with
like
that?
when and Dustfinger points out how he comes out of the book when Rhea goes in, but she goes in after Capricorn and one of the goons, or at least at the very least Capricorn comes out. So it's not like it's one for one. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like what are we losing? It's also the ferret is very much a character. So that's at
Mm.
least 3 characters. I can't recall exactly if there was another goon that came with Capricorn or not. I feel like there was, but I cannot recall. It's at least 2.5 to 3 characters that comes out of that book when we lose Rhea. So it's not person for person. So what's the deal with that? You know? And then I at first I love the idea of the books being whole ass worlds that these characters live
Mm.
within. Doesn't make a damn bit of sense when you think about it for just a second, because I would really love, you know, that director or that writer or that set designer that went that extra mile, and we see when something is read out of the book, that part of the page disappears, the words are gone, or they're added. Because what do you mean you added Rhea to the book? Is she in there
Yeah.
now? Do you see that? Like, is it described? And then when you take her
We'll
out, what do you
have a whole
mean?
conversation like our books parallel pocket dimensions or something.
Exactly. Like when
Like
that one goon drops into
I kind
Arabian
of
Nights, it's hilarious, but it's like, what does this mean for you now? Like,
right. And like the story is permanently changed because of the advent of that
exactly.
person in the
Uh
story. So
huh.
like no, I was trying to avoid bringing this up or at least to leave, but I have seen this concept used in a way that makes more sense in a book. Again, I've not read Inkheart, so I'm trying really hard to like know that everything I'm saying I
Mm-hmm.
there is a good chance that the book actually makes this right. But in the book that I've read that had a better version of this was called The Unlikely Escape of Uriah Heep. And it's an interesting take where it's very similar to Inkheart. There's this one young professor who discovered at a young age that when he read aloud, he connected with something that read out the character. But they don't it doesn't like it's not like actually the character. The character Uriah Heep for um exists within the book still. Nothing about the book
Mm-hmm.
changes or whatever world of the book you want to refer to. But now in the real world is a living embodiment of the
Right.
character
Yeah.
Uriah Heep.
Mm-hmm.
And that character will act and do as the character in the book, but the character is also fully conscious and able to tell that they are not the character in the book. They are a
Mm-hmm.
consequence of the magic that happened when the
Mm-hmm.
guy read. And they end up taking this story in a whole direction. They actually use it like this version of the power set is used how literature um like genuinely impacts our lives today and sort of also active time. Inkheart is way more action adventure. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, this is a plot device that makes a thing happen and you have to solve the problem because it's a part of the adventure. Um, and I think there is a fun metaphor to add about how stories come to life when you read each other, how real and important fiction can be, and how you can write your own story and do what's not been done before. You know, the thing is all present in the story of Inkheart, but they're focusing really hard on the magic system because of the severe consequence they introduced at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
People can disappear. A person's mother can accidentally get like taken away from you because of this power. And that doesn't really have anything to do with the metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a dramatic consequence for power.
Yeah.
And
It's just a
it
plot
doesn't
device, kind
really
of.
yeah, it's a MacGuffin's
Yeah.
happen. And I'm not about it. I wish there was
Yeah. It's
you know?
definitely it's an idea that should, again, let's just say for the sake of conversation right now, the book doesn't explain any of this because we don't know, so that our conversation makes sense. It's a wonderful idea that deserves either like a book series, a comic book, or a multi-season show, because the idea that like authors have weird connections to other universes, they don't write shit, they just see
Mm-hmm.
subconsciously into other worlds, and the
They're
silver
like
tongues,
channeling.
yes, the silver tongues are like the next level. They can bridge those gaps. Amazing. Love that idea. It's also kind of weird, right? Because it takes away the artistic liberty of the authors. Okay, maybe it's where it's just full blown magic and the silver tongues are basically doing spells and bringing things to life. Okay, what does that mean for the people that go into the books? Because that's like
Yeah.
that's weird. That's the next level. That's strange. Because I take a lot of issue with this, honestly, the more I think about it, because for one, Dustfinger going back into the book but without the ferret. Well, the story is different now. It's like, is it? Is it really?
Right.
Because first of all,
Right.
the
Because
fact that the story could
especially in the
be,
power set that they've
yeah,
created, it kind of seems like rather than like authors channeling things or
uh-huh,
tapping into other universes, it's kind of like the author creates the world and the
yeah,
Silver Tongue is able to access that created
right,
world.
and then they all have their own free
But
will, which is very strange
yeah, but that
because,
doesn't work, right?
yeah, like, because it's also, oh well, the story is different now because the ferret's not there, and not because Capricorn spent a decade in the real world, quote unquote, and has a
Yeah.
whole new perspective on evil and can do different things. You know, like, also, what does this mean if you have multiple copies of the same book? If you read Dustfinger out of Inkheart over here, does it mean that he's no longer in Inkheart over there? Because if it's just the book, then you can have multiple Inkhearts. If it's the books have access to a magical world or one magical telling of the story, the text or whatever. You know, there's fun things that you could like. You could have the what's the stuttering guy's name? I'm sorry. You could have Capricorn and him reading stuff out of
Yeah.
books in preparation for whatever. And as Helen Mirren's character, Eleanor's reading a book, words disappear. The character is gone.
Mhm.
A weapon has been removed, and she's like, what is happening? What is happening to my books?" And then Mo realizes what's happening because it affects books across literature, like all these really interesting ideas that could add that extra layer of like, oh crap, holy shit, what the heck is this? This is so interesting. We don't do anything with. I just I can't help but ask those questions because you play
Yeah.
enough with the ramifications of this magic, and we are dealing with the crux of these rules enough that I feel it's entirely appropriate to ask more questions about how these rules work and why we're bound by certain things. Because it's a little interesting and kind of goes against the idea that the author is just a window into another world, that Meggie can just make shit up, anything
Yeah.
in the real world. Like, does that only apply to literature characters? Or can she basically sit atop the Empire State Building and write down, and then Maggie was queen of the world? Everyone
I think
gave
it's
her
supposed
every.
to lean that way. Like I think it's supposed to
That
be
they just have
her power
power.
is not only rare, it's extremely just like because like the metaphor they're working with is that you can like the ability to tell stories impacts the world directly, right? And it's wrapped up with the love of stories and abuse of power and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. But ultimately what you're working with Inkheart and the ability to read out something into reality from fiction is that idea
Mm-hmm.
that fiction can create our reality. We can
Sure.
alter our reality
Sure.
through the
Sure.
stories we tell each other, right?
Yes.
So in that case, Maggie's power, we have reason to covet and fear because it
Mm-hmm.
is a very direct link to the thing. It's like a shortcut for all the things that we're doing generationally in the story. Um, and I think that makes sense. I think that out of all the things in the power set makes the most sense. But I struggle with what that kind of just means in general in the power set. Like, why
Yeah.
can only she do that?
Uh-huh.
What is so special about her that you can both create and read into reality? because apparently anybody can write a story.
Mm-hmm.
Arguably, anybody can be an author, and maybe prosody is important to silver tongues. You have to be able to read with passion or connect with the story, right? But why wouldn't a silver tongue, who is arguably an anybody, become an author and then read into reality?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Because there is no
well,
there's no basis for being a person that creates a
yeah.
world.
See, I
There's only a
think
basis for being a person that makes it real.
so. My only issue with how you were now analyzing her power is that it can't just be that because of how Brendan does it by accident. There is, and the fact that they go in and out of in that way, like her ability to just affect things and the reading with passion does this thing. Like I love all that, but it's not just that. Brandon just reads and stuff happens. So it's like there is a component to like they are wizards in one way. Like the silver tongue is a magical species, if you will, or like if
Right.
you want to say the magic has
Well,
selected them in some sort of way.
author isn't.
Sure.
So if you are a magical silver tongue,
Mm-hmm.
you can also be an author, which
Yes.
means that any silver tongue
Yes. Which is what
can
I'm
write their own story and make it real.
Yes, which is what I'm getting to. I think it's interesting that it can happen by accident and they not know about it, which is why I think there should have been more of an organization of people who keep track of this stuff. Not full blown Shield or Prodigium or whatever it's called in the Mummy. Not full blown, but this idea of like this idea of what you said, that fiction affects reality. I think it'd be really cool. We don't have to name drop specific names, but I love the idea in general, and this is the perfect world for it, of like maybe every religion exists in this world, every single one, because of the potency in which people have believed it in the past, and silver tongues have popped up over time. And so the Egyptian gods exist, the Greek gods exist, Jesus might be out and about. I love that idea because it's, again, this
You
is
could even go a more mundane route of just saying somebody. There are a ton of old stories about it.
well, I was
Somebody
gonna
read out
say,
an immortal track of silver tongues
uh-huh,
and their impact,
I was gonna say
right?
it'd be kind of nice, like a little throwaway line that actually there was an author who never got published, and that's where we got Jack the Ripper. Like just a handful of
Right.
things that actually has
Mm-hmm.
affected the world, and they just didn't know it because it's not like you don't realize that you're basically a god, that you have these god level powers, you
Yeah.
know. But it's an idea that Shark Boy and Lava Girl actually did, of like you believe in something so potently that it does become real. I like that idea in this over some sort of window into an alternate reality, or that books are worlds that they keep
Mm-hmm.
pulling out of or putting things in. I like the idea of mixing, bear with me, Shark Boy and Lava Girl and Night at the Museum. Believing in something until it's real, and the thing that is brought out is a echo of that idea, a
Yes. Yeah.
imitation of that idea almost, and they're aware of it. Because this idea of Dustfinger, that's a whole other level of Dustfinger, which is a little strange. He is brought out of the book, and sure, he's got a family, but he's aware that his family are characters in a book, and he wants nothing more than to get back to that. He's the guy in the Matrix trying to get back into the Matrix. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he's fighting for something that isn't real. He is aware
Well,
of the
I
world
think
he's a
that's a
part of.
part. I think that's a part of the flaw of the film splitting the perspective between the characters,
Mm-hmm.
because I think Dustfinger, okay, Dustheart, I think Dustfinger is supposed to be an intensely tragic character, a character that we know is going to, but what he is doing is important enough to do it anyway. And like, the fight to be with your family, even as, just a little bit longer. And the idea is that these worlds are as real and as the real world, or at least that's a bit of a conversation. A few times characters are, a few times our real world characters tell fictional read out characters, "Hey, you're just a character. I don't really care what's. You're just gonna have to
Mm-hmm.
deal with it." And so like there's a conversation being had throughout the film the inherent value of the life of the character that's been read out of their story. But from Dustfinger's perspective, that is reality. That's what matters to him, is getting back to his family and all. But I don't think we're given enough about him for us to feel truly invested in his story, especially since we have this whole character trait of him like being cowardly
I
or
know.
being a bit of a traitor. And
He's
like again, I
consistently
think
inconsistent.
yeah, and I think this idea of a character who's trying to, while they are fighting an incoming tragedy that he like we know they can't fully prevent, I think there's really something there.
Mm-hmm.
But we get it clearly in the film. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
think I think, you know, the actor is trying to convey what's going on, but
Mm-hmm.
there's not enough information and there's not enough sympathy. And the movie ultimately doesn't start with him, and so him as much as we the character start with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these are the characters we got introduced with. This is their work, following their story. They have a set of problems already engaged in. He
Mm-hmm.
walks in. He's related to those problems, kind of working in opposite of them after we figure out he probably should be working with them, and then there's a reason to go against. So we're already confused,
Mm-hmm.
and then they give us a complex and no time to really process the character. And so it just feels kind of like empty and like what are we supposed to invest in with this?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
It is.
I think they
It's strange, and it's Dustfinger is not only inconsistent in his motivations. He's all of Dustfinger is inconsistent to the point where I do find it annoying because he burns himself and he says like fire in my world never hurt me and fire in this world does. Like okay, well, does the fire that you use, is it not real fire? Like it's like if you were to blow that fire on something, would it not burn? Is it just show fire? No, because he uses it to burn down the castle later. Like he uses real fire. So why does fire of this world burn you, but the fire you make in your hands doesn't? Even though the fire that you make is just as powerful and just as real as other fire. Like it's straight. And then
yeah.
I look, I know no one is gonna care about this. I do. I do not like how little Aladdin could just start shooting fire out of his hands too. Like they just teach him how to
Mm-hmm.
do that. Like what are you doing? You guys are from different worlds, different rules of
Mm-hmm.
magic. Dustfinger has not indicated that anything he does is a trick. He's borderline got superpowers, and he's just
Yeah.
taught this guy to do that. So can Maggie do
Yeah.
that? Do you have to be a book character to do that?
Arguably, it makes more sense for her to be able to do it because she could just write it down and then she could do it.
Right. If she writes herself powers, she get powers. That's a whole other thing. So like, Dust. And I also, it's hard to believe Dustfinger's all his weird issues, his cowardliness, but he dies because he sacrifices himself for his ferret.
Yeah.
He dies trying to save the ferret. Like, dude,
It doesn't, it's not
no,
making sense.
it
It's
doesn't.
not
And
adding up.
I don't think. I just Dustfinger has a lot of agency because of how badly he wants to get back to his family. So, granted, we are another inconsistency of like how are we operating within the characters brought out of the books? Do they operate within very strict rules of like what the author intended, or do they have just as much free will as people? Because almost everyone else brought out of a book doesn't want to go back to the book. They don't have any longing. They don't feel a need to be a part of the story they came from. I feel like a dude with that much agency, after 10 years, should have it be slightly more of a question as to whether or not he wants to go back to the book. Because, for one thing, it doesn't look like he ages, which is an interesting thing to maybe keep in consideration. That mixed with, are you really in a rush? Nothing's happening in the book. Like you're missing out on nothing, and
Well,
you
and
have been. It's
the
been.
timelines are tricky too.
Uh huh.
Like when you're in a book world, does time move in the same way?
Exactly.
for our
Do you
world.
hop into the part where you left, or do you hop into a part later in the book? Can you do that if you are in the book? How does the book continue if a main character isn't there anymore? You know,
Yeah.
like there's too
Yeah.
many questions that are not answered, and I don't appreciate it. And Brendan Fraser isn't doing things that are interesting enough to keep this afloat, I shall say. I think
Yeah.
this is a very mild bad movie or a very bland good movie. Like
I
it's
think
teetering
there
on
are
that.
too many problems with the structure of the film for it to be a good film.
Mm.
I think it is a really interesting concept
Mm.
that's backed up by a lot of really cool costumes and like
Mm-hmm.
blocking. Like
Mm-hmm.
every now and then a scene really catches
Oh
attention because
yes.
they like lay it out, right? Especially that sort of like climax scene where they're, there's a giant beast coming in and she's chanting
Yes.
and reading and trying to get all rid of
Tornado
it, and
comes down
then
through
she's
the
like
yeah.
dismissing all the characters,
Yeah.
like
Full blown
there's some
Thanos
real
snap
elegance to
style.
that.
Uh-huh.
There's some real like elegance to that, and there's some real visual, but there's not enough structure to support the actual story.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a collage of cool ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Like you were saying, it feels like a first draft. It really does. Like I think there's a lot to this. Like if I were to get this script or even like this as like an editor or a beta reader, I'd be like, this is really cool. We just got to answer some questions and choose who we want to focus.
Mm-hmm.
And that would really make it good. Like
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it requires a lot of work, but a couple of things focused down and a couple of questions answered. And I think we really have something golden here, which makes me
Absolutely.
want to read the book because there's
Yeah,
a
me
good
too.
chance the book actually did take the time to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But for the movie, I don't know. It was kind of like
It's
made
lackluster
for
for
the
such
fun
a
of it.
beautiful idea.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
And it doesn't care about really helping the reader understand the situation or
mm-hmm.
the viewer understand the situation. It's only like hitting on some main ideas
Mm-hmm.
day. I think it's a bad adaptation. I'm gonna guess it's a bad adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
It's assuming some reader knowledge and investment before telling the story.
Well, I think it's got a little bit of I I am always reluctantly impressed when there's a beautiful story that takes place in a fantastical world and the story is so good that you don't even care about the fantastical world. Like it does not take focus away somehow, and therefore you don't maybe care about the rules as much. But I also enjoy when you introduce an idea and you introduce some rules and then you introduce a story that is the outcome of those rules and you go from there. And we're not doing this here. This is a very late 90s, early 2000s movie of like, I want this thing to happen, which is I want him to lose his wife and go down the journey of getting her back and have to deal with raising a daughter by himself and going on this mission. And there's cool things that happen around him because of the power that caused that. Because there's other issues. I will guarantee you that first moment with Little Red Riding Hood's hood is not the first time that man has read something out loud. So it would be interesting. Again, I understand that you have to include Inkheart because that's the name. But like the way it begins, to read something out of a book that kidnaps the wife or kills the wife, and he cuts off reading completely, or he's going out, he's looking for a book that could help bring her back in a different way. And Dustfinger is actually Frankenstein's monster because he's doing the same thing. He's following this man across countries. He's wearing the long coat. He's got the disheveled hair. It's very similar. And to find out that things he's been reading since he was 8 have been happening, and the longer they go, like the more they're drawn to him or something like that. I don't know, because like you're not going to tell me that Red Riding Hood thing was the first thing ever. You can't tell me that.
Yeah.
He's like, well, that's when his power kicked in. But like, the daughter's power kicks in when she's 13. So what do you mean? There's no age limit. What do you mean?
I kind of like the idea of it being about the emotional connection to the story, and maybe him having a kid to read stories to opens a new connection for him, and so maybe that is the time that he reads something out. Like it's possible that he's not been followed around his kid, but I think it's actually way more interesting if we're following Maggie and we learn that her dad is also a silver tongue. We learn it from the perspective of like he's doing his best to keep her from reading aloud because
Mhm.
she keeps bringing things into
Oh,
reality and he has
yes.
to keep handling
Yes.
it.
Yes, yes,
Like,
yes, yes,
yeah.
yes. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Ooh,
So then
love
it's
that.
actually like her little kid interpretations of what she's been reading since she was like, I don't know, 8 years
Yeah.
old. And
Curious George, give a pig a pancake,
yeah.
and dude, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know if this would help or not, but what if a young Brendan Fraser, teenager, college days, realizes he has this power? And he doesn't go he's not crazy. So he doesn't go full blown Empire State Building. I'm going to take over the world, get myself powers, all that good stuff. But he does read out Excalibur just to see. He's not doesn't work. He reads out, maybe Robin Hood. They go out drinking and stuff. Some, college days, all that good stuff. Reads out certain things. Then he thinks, what if I write my own stories? And he does, and it works. And the reason Rhea can go back and forth between books is because it's a character he made up. And his
Mm.
kid is, a part of that. Like
The bridge.
she's half literary character, half real.
We'd run into some agency problems with
Sure,
that,
sure you do.
but
But that's for the
it's
writing room.
interesting.
That's for something to think about, and
Hmm.
that's for an extra
Hmm.
layer to this world. Because like, is that an option? Because she's now gonna date a literary character. Do they have
That's
DNA?
true.
Can they get sick? Can they age? Do they age? That ferret,
I
well, a mythical creature of some sort, ferrets don't live that long. So like, what are the
I
rules?
actually I'm of the mind that the litter are kind of frozen. Like I get the sense that no time passed for Reza until she was brought back
Sure.
to
What does
the
that
real
mean for
world,
little
right?
Aladdin? Whatever his name is. I know it's not Aladdin, but he's basically Aladdin.
Which is Fareed.
Sure. What does that mean for him? What's gonna happen there? I don't know. It's a very fair question, I think, because that boy does not go back into the book. That's
See,
weird.
okay, this is making me want to suggest that you read The Unlikely Escape of Uriah Heep. Again, I don't, not that anyone's listening to this, but like if there is a fan of Inkheart, I fully apologize for not being able to speak accurately to the book because there's a good chance that a lot of what we're saying, they're just,
It's
it's
like
been
easily
answered.
explained.
It's
Yeah,
in
they
the
go into
book.
all this. They go into all this. Just read the book.
Yeah,
Read the book.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm talking about something I don't know, but the version I do know, The Unlikely Escape of Uriah, it's kind of interacts with all this stuff because the kid's been doing it since he was young, and he only really like his parents and his brother hid it from him. And then he went into literature in college,
Oh.
and they were like, "Okay, we need to have a conversation."
Mm-hmm.
And he pursued it still. He like does his best to avoid accidentally reading it. But that's when you meet him. As it turns out, he went through a phase of like, I want to talk to this character. I'm going to intentionally bring them out of the book so we can have a conversation. And he also talks about how his reading of it can color the way that the character appears into reality. He has multiple different versions of some characters that have
Ooh.
slightly different characteristics because of how he was reading them
Oh.
at the different
Oh.
time.
Oh. Whoa. That's
Yeah.
weird.
It's
Interesting.
really cool. And they managed to make a pretty good little like action adventure story in the sort of like all this metaphor love of um I hesitate recommending it to just anybody because it is very much based in a love of literary criticism,
Mm-hmm.
taking a look at classic texts and how they interact with each other and what they say about us and society, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not as wide as the appeal might be. Like Inkheart is genuinely just, hey,
Mm-hmm.
what if what we read came to life, like genuinely came to life? This is way more of like a that, but in college. And so it's, but I don't know. I think it does a really cool job with the rule set, and having that rule set in my head watching this film. I'm trying to figure out what the rules are, or what the expectations are for set, and I'm
Mm,
not getting it from the film. I
yeah,
don't know what's going on.
yeah. I think this is an example of, I don't even know where I'm going with that, honestly. I'm thinking of all the different ways you could do it. There's so
Mm-hmm.
many possibilities. Like, this would be an amazing animated film, full blown. Like, just go all out. This would be an amazing series. This would be an amazing comic book. I just think as it
Mm-hmm.
is, sadly, and I know it could be worse. I know this movie could be worse. There's charm to it. There's fun to it. There's silliness to it. There's
Mm-hmm.
wonderful twinkly magic. But like, of the immediate options, I almost feel like this was the worst way you could have adapted this, because it's just
There are worse ways to do it, I'm
sure,
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 but
sure,
this
sure.
was not a strong
No,
pull. This
like,
is, yeah.
this is one of the ones we've watched. This will be the one though that I will think about, because I'm left unsatisfied because of how you gave me the best elevator pitch I've ever heard of this incredible book series that exists, and then you gave me a bookmark, and that's all I get.
Mhm.
Like, that, what? What do you mean? And not only does that book series not exist for me to, like, go, again, I'm ignoring the book that exists. I can't go see the
I was
best
gonna say
version of
there
this.
actually is a book
It
series you
could
can go
suck.
read.
We don't know. It could suck. But like, the way, all the things we've discussed, like, those don't exist. They just don't. And as extra insult to injury, you wasted Brendan Fraser. Like, you just did. You did. You didn't waste Helen
Yeah.
Mirren, so you get points back. But like, you're not having
Mhm.
Brendan do his Brendan things. Come on. That's so
Yeah.
weird to think that this character was inspired by Rick O'Connell, and not, for
Yeah.
one, Evie, the book nerd, who literally
Fair.
brings things to life out of the book she reads in that movie.
Hmm.
But Rick O'Connell, the guy who shoots the stuff that she brings to life out of the book she reads? Like, look, I love Rick O'Connell. I would die for Rick O'Connell. Straight up. But, like, that's not the guy I would put into a story about a little bookworm that brings things to
Actually,
life.
I have thought of something, only slightly related to what you were just saying, and I
Mm-hmm.
do want to throw it in here before we call it quits.
Yeah.
I think it is a fantastic story writing choice to have our main two characters be a father and a daughter.
Yeah.
The fact that this is like a family reading to each other, and there are like consequences of the
Mm-hmm.
family reading to each other, is great. I mean, it seems like maybe kind of obvious, but just in general, like I feel like stories do not prioritize non-romantic relationships.
True.
And this is one that is genuinely relevant to the story they're telling, and I think really heightens everything that happens. The fact that we have a father looking out for his daughter, they both have a unique power set that plays into the world creating. They both make choices that impact the other in positive and negative ways. Like in a relationship, they have a genuinely positive relationship. I think some of the writing stiff around their relationship, but in general, they have a happy, successful relationship, even though it is he accidentally separated her from her mom.
Mm-hmm.
They understand each other and get along and through their problems together as much as possible while still having character arcs that are not exactly the same. Like they're in the story. I like that a lot. It's not executed super well because we also and Dustfinger is thrown in there and care about him with all of that. But I do really like that it is a child relationship that the
Mm-hmm.
story centers around for stories that come to life. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, that's fair. I could give it points there for sure. I just, it's surrounded by a lot of other really frustrating things.
Yeah. Really, like I don't not every magic system has to be like a hard magic system.
Sure.
But if you're going to have the story center on consequences of using You need to be specific and consistent with the concept.
I don't think that's wrong to
And we don't get
expect.
that.
Like,
Yeah.
so you got on me a little bit last week about the rules of Stardust, which is fine. They really only applied one rule. I want more because of how grounded they seem to make the other world. Like, I feel like there's reason to ask, but the movie isn't about that or exploring that. The big thing about that one is the wall. I do think there could have been more explained about the wall. But in this, everything is hinging on the rules of this magic.
Agreed.
Everything exists
Yeah.
because of this magic. We get a lot, technically, from this magic. We do not spend enough time talking about how it works. Just don't.
Mm-hmm.
So, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a little,
Especially when we have like a protege situation.
yeah,
Like Mo should be telling Maggie what she
yeah,
needs to know as she's discovering this power, and
yeah,
we don't have a conversation like that.
right. And also, it's like it's implied, but it needs to be elaborated on. Like, the magic doesn't work unless you write it down. Like, it doesn't have to be paper. It doesn't have to be, well thought out or edited. It's just whatever you. What if you have a typo? What if you say the
Yeah.
word wrong? Like,
Yeah.
and
Well, I mean, we have something with the words being said
yeah,
wrong.
that's I think that's kind of insulting. Honestly, I feel bad for him. That's such a weird joke to throw in there that the only other silver tongue I found was a stutterer, and that's I don't know. I
I
find
think
that
it was meant to be sort of sincere in the sense that, because like the silver tongue magic only works if you connect with the text, right? So the guy who's reading, I don't remember his name. I feel bad. But he genuinely connects with the text, which means he gets out of reading what you can, like the maximum you get, right? But because of his speech impediment, reading aloud for him is a struggle, and prosody is like when you're listening to someone tell you a story, the prosody, the fluency with which they speak, the sort of musical quality that happens when they really get into the zone of reading the story, that's a part of the experience. And if you have someone who stutters, that will take away from that experience. I think it's an honest look at that situation. I will say they make him a bit of a happy about that, but that's mostly because he's framed in the picture with bad guys. When he's with our good guys, they treat him with respect.
yeah.
So I don't think it's a problematic interpretation.
Sure. I find just a bit of issue with. I understand that there's a great deal of magic that is connected to the spoken word. However, I think there's more literary connection to, shall we say, the spirit or whatever of the person reading it, and to only be able to connect to it on such a level if you read it out loud is kind of limiting. So I don't know. I understand it messes
I,
it messes with like how the movie's gonna work and how the silver tongue thing and all, but like what happens. Like, I think that's, for one, that's like a question I would ask. Shall we say Helen Mirren's character, who's like a secret witch who knows everything about silver tongues, and she can answer these questions and so on and so forth. Let's say, so like, why is it that the silver tongue has to say it out loud? What if they just read it in their
because
mind?
reading is primarily meant to be traditional. Like
Sure.
the idea of reading silently in your brain, like to yourself, is a really relatively new concept in the world. Reading was always a process that went from visuals to audio before it went even really to meaning in your head. When people would read, the most common form of entertainment for a long time was to have one person read aloud from a book while everyone sits around the fire
True.
and usually does some sort of activity. They're pulling from tradition with the silver tongue thing. It's that the best version of a story, they're saying, is the one that is collectively shared with people. And that's what brings it to life, that final version of reading it aloud. Plus, there are people who argue that reading something aloud fluently and comfortably with the right emphasis and places is actually how you best interpret the author's intention. because even if you're sort of adding those flourishes in your head, you haven't really sort of brought to light the author's creation until it is spoken aloud. The final transformation, or the like not the visual, the audio that you
Mhm.
produce when you're reading off the page.
My last note on that then would be I don't think a stutter should get in the way of that.
But it's about the interpretation, and the stutter is going to get in the way.
But like only a little. I mean, what happens if a silver tongue is dyslexic and fully mispronounces a word? Instead of Toto, you get a cat, but there's not a cat in there. You know, like I'm just more
I think there would
questions.
be consequences similar to the print on the
Hmm.
things brought from the book.
I don't know. There's
Which,
something.
like, to be fair, the print, like, in the movie at
I
least,
mean, it's
that's
interesting.
not much of a consequence
No, it's
because
not.
it looks like a
It is
tattoo, and
interesting
the
in the
thing is
movie a little.
fully
Yeah.
alive.
Um, the Rhea thing is stupid. Because that's just a convenient consequence that she doesn't have her voice. Um,
Mhm,
I
mhm,
understand and
mm.
appreciate what you said about the spoken word, the significance of it, the history of it. I get that. There's something, and I can't quite put my finger on it, that still bothers me about the incompleteness of the readings coming to life just because the man has a stutter. I'm not entirely sure what it is. Something about it bothers me. That's kind of our
Okay.
time, though, on Inkheart. I
Yeah.
was honestly, I
Mhm.
was worried there wasn't going to be enough to talk about. I was totally wrong. We made a full hour.
Yeah, no, as it turns out, just kinda chopped it up a little bit,
Well,
dissected it, looked at the
there were
parts.
things to discuss. The magic
Mhm.
most of all. But for me, it
This
is not a
my
whale.
final thought, no, it is not a whale, unfortunately, and I don't know that I liked it that much as a kid either. Like, I remember thinking this is a concept, but I also got, like, confused several points throughout the film, and I assumed it was just because I was too young to fully understand what was.
Mm,
I did a lot. I was like, I must not have the context, but after watching it again, I think it's just bad storytelling at
yeah,
times. It's
it's
just
just not that
confusing. The editing,
good. Yeah.
yeah. So my final thought on it is that I had actually liked to read the book, having
Yeah.
watched the movie, in hopes that the book kind of saves the concept
Hmm.
because the
My
concept is so
It
cool.
is.
It's so
My
cool.
my only last little bit there is when you introduce a concept like this, the last thing I want is original characters. Like not
Agreed.
not as in Brendan Fraser's character or Maggie, but
Hmm.
like, oh,
Dust finger.
you're gonna give me a world where Frankenstein and Dracula, Dorothy, the Tin Man, Dorian Gray, and whoever else are all gonna be interacting. I don't give a fuck about Capricorn and Dustfinger. I don't know their
Yeah.
history. I don't know their world. I don't care about like, and I understand that maybe that isn't fair. But I don't care. I really don't. I want to see these other characters interacting. That's what I'm here for. That's the idea. And
Yeah.
ugh, yeah. So gotta read it. That's a different episode. But yeah, as it is, 'tis not a whale.
Tis not a whale.
On to the next. A very similar idea actually next
It
week.
is.
Kind of.
Hopefully more thought through.
If I recall from the one time I saw it, I think it is simply because it is the opposite of what's going on in this one. And so there's a little
Mm-hmm.
more
Character going into the
kind of,
worlds of
yeah.
fiction.
And so there's a little more leeway, I think, with
Mhm.
how those rules work. But I don't know. I haven't seen that movie in over a decade. So we'll see next week. As it is, we're done. Bye, everyone. See ya. Gosh, go get
Bye.